The morning looked perfect to perfect, the kind of perfect that almost feels staged. The sun poured over the Oakwood Country Club, so bright it bounced off every crystal glass and polished surface, making everything shine a little harder than it should. It lit up my husband Gabriel's flawless smile, the one he wore like part of his uniform, the one that convinced everyone we had the perfect life. From the outside, we were exactly what people admired: successful, stable, untouchable. I sat there playing my role, calm and composed, while my best friend Grace sat to my left, relaxed and glowing, slowly sipping her mimosa like she belonged in that picture just as much as I did. The table buzzed with light conversation, laughter, and polite voices blending together into a soft background noise. It all felt easy, controlled. Until it wasn't. My 5-year-old daughter Maria leaned closer to Grace, reaching into her designer purse, looking for a piece of gum. It was such a small, ordinary action that no one even noticed at first. Kids do that. They reach, they grab, they explore without thinking twice. But what she pulled out wasn't gum. It was a heavy black metal card. The corporate onyx card. She held it up in her small hand, turning it slightly as the sunlight caught its sharp edges. And then, in the simplest voice, with no understanding of the storm she was about to create, she asked, "Mommy, why does Auntie Grace have Daddy's special work money?" Everything stopped. Grace's glass slipped from her fingers and shattered against the table. Gabriel's face drained of color so quickly it looked unreal, like someone had flipped a switch. The laughter disappeared, the noise faded, the illusion cracked. And in 3 seconds, everything I thought I knew was gone. Drop a comment and let me know where you are listening from and what time it is for you right now. I would love to know who is part of our community. I didn't scream. Screaming is for people who didn't see it coming. Screaming is for people who are shocked, but somewhere deep inside me, behind years of long hospital shifts, late bills, and quiet sacrifices, there was a part of me that already knew. I had just kept it locked away, buried under routine and responsibility. Now I was finally looking at it clearly, like numbers on a page, like a ledger that had always been there. I had just refused to read it. I reached out and took the card gently from Maria's hand. It was sticky from spilled mimosa. I picked up a linen napkin and wiped it slowly, carefully, my movements steady and precise, like I was cleaning something fragile or something dangerous. Gabriel was still staring at me, his mouth slightly open like he was trying to speak but couldn't find the words. Grace was dabbing at her dress, whispering excuses that didn't hold shape long enough to matter. I stood up. "We'll talk about this at home," I said. My voice didn't shake, it didn't rise, it didn't carry anger. It sounded final, like a decision that had already been made. I took Maria's hand and walked away from the table, leaving behind broken glass and a silence heavier than anything that had come before. I didn't look back, not at Gabriel, not at Grace. Their embarrassment meant nothing to me now. All that mattered was the truth. I buckled Maria into her car seat, her eyes wide and confused, trying to make sense of what she had just seen. "Mommy, is Daddy in timeout?" she asked softly. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in a long time, everything felt clear. For years, Gabriel and Grace had built a story. Late-night meetings, business trips, partnerships, plans. They layered lie over lie until it formed something that looked real enough to believe. And I did believe it. I even felt guilty for questioning it, but Maria didn't care about any of that. She didn't care about their story. She saw one simple thing, a card, where it didn't belong. That was it. It took a 5-year-old's honest eyes to cut through 10 years of carefully built lies. Truth is simple. It doesn't need explanation. It doesn't twist or hide. It just is a black metal card in the wrong purse, and I was done pretending not to see it. I didn't drive home. Home was filled with memories, pictures, and feelings I wasn't ready to face. It was where the illusion lived. So I drove straight to Gabriel's office. The building was empty. It was Sunday, quiet, cold, lifeless, just glass and steel holding secrets inside. But I still had access, the codes, the passwords, things Gabriel trusted me with once, long ago. When we were still building something real together, he probably thought I had forgotten. He was wrong. I sat at his desk, the leather chair cold against my back, and logged into the system. The screen flickered, then lit up. And there it was, not a mistake, not an accident, a pattern. I didn't panic. Panic is for people who don't know what to do. I've spent years working as a nurse. Panic wastes time. So I started working, click by click, file by file, transaction by transaction. I followed the money like tracing a vein. It wasn't small. It wasn't random. It was a lifestyle. Thousands spent at luxury spas, payments to Grace's business, regular transfers labeled as consulting fees sent straight into her personal account every 2 weeks. The list kept going, scrolling down. I realized how much there was. The bar on the side of the screen was tiny, barely moving as I scrolled through page after page. My chest felt cold. Not from shock. From understanding. I hadn't just been a wife. I had been part of something else. Something built on lies. Gabriel wasn't struggling. He wasn't building anything real. He was taking, and I was the one working, covering, sacrificing, making sure everything stayed afloat while he played a role that wasn't his. Every number on that screen meant something. Hours of my life. Missed moments with Maria, things I said we couldn't afford. All of it. Right there, I printed everything. The machine hummed steadily, filling the empty office with the sound of truth turning into paper. By the time it finished, something inside me had changed. I wasn't confused anymore. I wasn't hurt in the way I expected. I was focused. I wasn't a victim. I was an auditor, and the audit was just beginning. I sat at the kitchen island later, the cold granite pressing against my arms, the stack of fresh papers in my bag still smelling faintly of ink, and something broken. The front door slammed open, loud and sharp, like a warning shot. Gabriel walked in, his tie loose, his face red with anger and alcohol. He didn't ask where I had been. He didn't ask why I left. He attacked. "You humiliated us," he said, his voice low and sharp. "Do you have any idea what you did to my reputation?" I didn't answer. I just watched him. It was almost interesting. He wasn't afraid of what I knew. He was angry that I stopped playing along. The back door opened and Grace walked in, holding a tissue, her expression carefully arranged to look hurt. "Jasmine," she said softly, "I can't believe you would think something like that about me. We're family." Then came the story. Smooth, practiced, detailed. They sat across from me, working together, explaining everything away. The spa charges were networking. The money transfers were business. The payments were investments for a future project. It was all for me, for us. They said I ruined it because I didn't trust them, because I was insecure, because I didn't understand their world. I sat there and listened, and finally, I understood. It didn't happen all at once. It never does. It happened slowly. One small change at a time, one excuse after another. Until one day, you realize everything is different and you didn't even notice when it changed. But now, looking at them, seeing the cracks in their confidence, the panic behind their words, it was over. "You're being crazy," Gabriel snapped, slamming his hand on the counter. "Give me the card back. Jasmine, we have meetings tomorrow." His hand twitched slightly. Grace waited, expecting me to give in. They thought I would fold. Like always, I reached into my pocket and pulled out the heavy black metal card. I slid it across the counter. It made a sharp sound against the stone. "Here," I said. My voice was empty, calm. Gabriel grabbed it quickly, relief washing over him. He thought he had one. He thought nothing had changed, but everything had. "I'm going to bed," I said quietly. "I have an early shift." I walked past them and went upstairs. I didn't lock the door. I didn't need to. They were downstairs, celebrating, thinking everything was fine again. Let them think that. They didn't know the truth yet. They didn't know the shift had already happened. They didn't know the heat was gone. They didn't know the house was getting colder by the second. And they didn't know I had just turned off the stove and the house was getting very, very cold. I felt a wave of nausea, not from shock, but from recognition. I remember the nights I came home exhausted, feet aching, and found Gabriel working late in his office. He wasn't working. He was managing the ledger of his life. I remembered Grace complaining about how tacky it was to worry about money while wearing a dress paid for by my exhaustion. "Is the company solvent?" I asked, my voice hollow. David shook his head barely. "He's robbing Peter to pay Paul, and Paul is his cousin." I realized then that I wasn't just a wife. I was the only solvent person in this entire family. They were playing rich, acting out a fantasy of high society on a stage built of credit cards and fraud. And I was the one paying the electric bill to keep the lights on. "Print it," I said. "Print everything. The shell company, the transfers, the loan documents. I need it all." David hesitated. "Jasmine, these are serious financial irregularities. If this gets out, it's going to get out," I said. "But not yet. I need one more piece of the puzzle." I left the bank with a thick folder under my arm. The sun was shining, people were walking their dogs, the world was continuing. As if my life hadn't just been revealed as a counterfeit bill. I got into my car and sat there for a long time gripping the steering wheel. I wasn't going to confront them yet. Confrontation was emotional. This needed to be surgical. I needed to know exactly how deep the rot went. I needed to know if there was anything left to save or if I needed to burn the whole structure down to the ground. I started the engine. I had one more stop to make. David pulled one final sheet from the stack, his hand trembling slightly. "Jasmine, there's one more thing. I wasn't sure if I should show you this yet, but you need the full picture." He slid the paper across the mahogany desk. It was a transfer confirmation dated just 3 days ago. Amount $60,000. Source: Maria's College Trust Fund. Recipient: Graceful Designs LLC. Authorization: Jasmine Reynolds. I stared at the signature at the bottom. It was my name. It had the loops of my J and the sharp cross of my T, but the ink pressure was wrong. The slant was too perfect. It was a forgery, a clumsy, desperate forgery made by someone who had watched me sign checks for a decade. The air left the room. My vision tunneled until all I could see was that number, $60,000. That wasn't just money. That was Maria's future. That was every birthday check from my parents. Every bonus I'd squirreled away. Every sacrifice I had made so she wouldn't have to start her life with debt. Gone. Vaporized to pay for Grace's failing vanity project. They stole from her, I whispered. The sound was strangled, unrecognizable. They stole from a child. This wasn't embezzlement. This wasn't marital fraud. This was a felony against my daughter. The man who was supposed to protect her, the father who tucked her in at night, had liquidated her safety net to buy another month of pretending to be rich. I felt a physical pain in my chest. A sharp twisting agony that had nothing to do with heartbreak and everything to do with betrayal. The narcissistic injury, I remembered reading about it once. People like Gabriel and Grace, they don't see others as people, they see them as mirrors. Maria wasn't a person to them. She was an asset to be liquidated when the mirror cracked. They stole her future. Not because they needed bread, but because they needed status. They needed the facade more than they needed their own child to have an education. It's a felony, isn't it? I asked. Looking up at David, he nodded slowly. Wire fraud, forgery, theft. If you report this, if I stood up clutching the paper so hard it crinkled, there is no if, David. There is only when. I walked out of the bank into the blinding sunlight. The world looked different now, sharper, crueler. The last vestige of the woman who loved Gabriel. The woman who made excuses for his ambition died on that sidewalk. In her place was something else entirely, a mother who had just found the wolf in the nursery. I got into my car and drove, not home, not yet. I had one more stop. One more person who needed to see the ledger, Patricia, Gabriel's mother. The matriarch who had always treated Grace like a second daughter. I needed to know if the rot went all the way to the root. I needed to know if I was fighting a man or an entire bloodline. I pulled up to her manicured colonial house, the engine cutting out into silence. I grabbed the folder. It felt heavy, like a weapon. I walked up the path, my heels clicking on the stone, sounding like the ticking of a clock running out of time. Patricia opened the door, a polite smile plastered on her face. It faltered when she saw my expression. I didn't wait for an invitation. I walked past her into the living room. The folder clutched in my hand. Jasmine, she asked, following me. Is everything all right? Where's Gabriel? Gabriel is busy, I said. Busy pretending to run a company, busy stealing from your granddaughter. I opened the folder and handed her the transfer confirmation, the one showing the $60. Zero moving from Maria's trust to Grace's LLC, the one with the forged signature. What is this? Patricia asked, squinting at the paper. That is a felony, I said. That is Gabriel stealing Maria's college fund to pay for Grace's boutique. He forged my signature. Patricia, he stole $60,000 from a 5-year-old. Patricia sank onto the sofa. The paper trembling in her hand, she stared at it for a long time. Then she looked up at me, and her eyes weren't filled with shock, they were filled with resignation. He told me he was just borrowing it, she whispered. He said it was temporary, a bridge loan. My blood ran cold. You knew? I didn't know he forged your signature, she said quickly. But I knew he was moving money. He came to me last week. He was desperate. He said Grace was in trouble. Grace is always in trouble, I shouted, startling her. Why is he so obsessed with saving Grace? Why does he rob his own child to pay for her mistakes? It's not normal, Patricia. It's not just family. Loyalty, what is going on? Patricia looked away, her gaze fixing on a framed photo on the mantel. It was an old picture taken 25 years ago, Gabriel as a teenager and a young girl, Grace, standing next to him, looking at him with adoring eyes. They aren't cousins, Patricia said softly. The room went silent. What? Grace isn't my sister's daughter. My sister couldn't have children. She adopted Grace when she was 12. Gabriel was 15. They bonded very quickly, too quickly. She took a shaky breath. When they were in their early 20s, before he met you, they were together. Not as family, as lovers. The world tilted. The closeness, the late nights, the way they looked at each other when they thought no one was watching. It wasn't just the financial betrayal, it was an emotional, incestuous knot that had never been untied. I thought it was over, Patricia wept. When he met you, he promised me it was over. He said, Grace was just family, but they never stopped, did they? They've been playing house with your money all this time. I felt sick, physically sick. I had been the third wheel. In my own marriage, I had been the bankroll for their twisted love story. Every time I paid a bill, every time I covered a shift, I was funding their affair. Does anyone else know? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. No, Patricia said. Just us and now you. I took the paper back from her hand. Not just me, not anymore. Jasmine, please, she begged, standing up. Think about the scandal. Think about Maria. I am thinking about Maria, I said, my voice hard as diamond. That's why I'm burning it down. I walked out of the house, leaving Patricia weeping in her living rooms. The truth was out. The rot went all the way to the core. There was no saving this. There was no fixing it. There was only the end. I got into my car. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Gabriel. Investors are here. Where are you? We need to present a united front. I looked at the message and smiled. A united front. He wanted a performance. He wanted the beautiful wife to stand by his side and nod while he spun more lies. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. My scrubs were wrinkled. My hair was messy. I looked exhausted, but I also looked like something else. I looked dangerous. I'm coming, Gabriel. I whispered to the empty car. I'm coming to present the truth. I put the car in gear and drove toward the office. The board meeting was starting in 20 minutes and I had a presentation of my own to make. I walked into the conference room. It was all glass and chrome, designed to intimidate. Gabriel sat at the head of the table, flanked by 3 men in expensive suits, his angel investors. Grace was perched on a chair in the corner, looking small and nervous. When I entered, the conversation stopped. Jasmine, Gabriel said, standing up, his smile tight. Honey, you're in your scrubs. Is everything okay? We're in the middle of a strategy session. I know, I said. I'm here to update the strategy. I walked to the table and placed the folder in the center. I didn't sit down, gentlemen. I said to the investors, my name is Jasmine. I'm Gabriel's wife, and I think you should see this. Gabrielle lunged for the folder, but one of the investors, a man named Robert, who had always been kind to me at holiday parties, got there first. He opened it. He saw the spreadsheets, the transfers to Grace, the bankruptcy filings for the boutique, the forged trust fund withdrawal. What is this? Robert asked, his voice low. That is a record of where your money actually went, I said. It didn't go to R&D. It didn't go to marketing. It went to rent for a failing dress shop. It went to spa days. It went to maintaining a lifestyle neither of them could afford. Gabriel's face turned purple. She's lying. She's hysterical. She's upset about a family dispute. The numbers aren't emotional, Gabrielle. I said the bank records aren't hysterical. You forged my signature to steal from your own daughter because you ran out of other people's money to burn. Grace started to cry, a high keening sound. We were going to pay it back. It was just a loan. Robert looked from the papers to Gabriel. You told us the capital was secure. You told us you had a runway of 18 months. He has a runway of 0. I said he's insolvent. The room erupted. The investors were shouting. Gabriel was shouting back, desperate, cornered. Grace was sobbing. I watched them for a moment. The chaos I had unleashed. It wasn't my chaos anymore. It was theirs. Gabriel turned to me, his eyes wide with panic. Jasmine, please tell them it's a mistake. We can fix this. Think of the family. I looked at him and I felt absolutely nothing. The man I had loved was gone, replaced by this sweating, lying stranger. I am thinking of my family, I said, Maria and me. I turned and walked out of the room. Behind me, I heard Robert say, call the DA. I walked through the office, past the confused receptionist, out into the cool evening air. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Patricia. I'm so sorry. The text read, I'm so sorry. I didn't reply. I got into my car and drove. I picked up Maria from my friend's house. She was happy, oblivious, holding a drawing she had made of a cat. Ready to go home, Mommy? She asked. Not yet, baby, I said. Let's go see the ocean first. We drove to the old pier. It was windy, the salt spray stinging my cheeks. We bought hot chocolate from a stand and sat on a bench, watching the waves crash against the pilings. It was cold and dark and real. Where's Daddy? Maria asked, blowing on her steam. Daddy made some very bad choices, I said. He's going to be in timeout for a long, long time. We won't see him for a while. Is he in trouble? Yes, baby, big trouble. Are we in trouble? I looked at her. Her face was open, trusting. She didn't know about the money. She didn't know about the lies. She just knew that I was there. No, I said, pulling her close. We're not in trouble. We're safe. I pulled out my phone. I opened the family group chat, the one where Grace sent photos of her success, where Gabriel bragged about his deals. Delete group, block number Gabrielle, block number Grace. I put the phone away. I took a deep breath of the cold, clean air. I didn't know where we would live next week. I didn't know how I would rebuild the trust fund, but I knew one thing. I was free. If you believe that the truth always comes out in the end, hit that share button and don't forget to follow for more stories about reclaiming your